that moment in time when they started, ATP was used. Now, after they got into that part where they're, okay, they're in what's called oxygen debt, all right? Then the cells will begin to function into making ATP in the electron transport chain. That's when they're kind of hitting their stride. And all those endorphins kick in, okay? They're all happy, you know, and all that sort of stuff, okay? Go figure. Now, at the point where they were in oxygen debt, their body had to make energy by way of only the cytoplasm. None of this glucose molecule went into the mitochondria. They only generated 2 ATPs. The process that occurred in the cytoplasm only because that's this point right here, okay, where this is my cytoplasm, my glucose has entered, all right, and the only energy I get for that cell now is 2 ATPs. Is that a lot? No. It also forms the huge lactic acid. So this part right here, where it's only in the cytoplasm, note the only molecule that can provide energy at this point is glucose. You cannot use a fat, you cannot use a protein. The body will do this. The body will get energy in this form. It is not in any way efficient. It builds up the huge lactic acid molecule in the cells. So people who do really strenuous sports, okay, they'll build up the lactic acid because they're getting energy anaerobically. Have you ever seen like the movies where the people are boxers, okay, and after the fight you see a person rubbing them down after the fight, okay? It's because they're rubbing down or trying to push out that lactic acid. All right? It's painful. It's what makes you sore after exercise. When the body, or maybe I should say when the cell does this, whenever you hear the term lyse, lyse means to break in half, okay? To break something apart, okay? The only thing that it could break apart was a glucose molecule. So therefore, the process of breaking down that glucose molecule that entered through the cell is called glycolysis. It is lysing of that glucose molecule. It takes the 6-carbon ring and turns it into 2 3-carbon chains. It splits the glucose molecule. When the cell makes energy in the form of glycolysis, all right, the steps that it's going to go through, it's going to rearrange those carbon rings. And like I said, I'm not asking you to know this, okay? I'm asking you to follow along with the process. I would not dare ask you to tell me dihydroxyacetone phosphate forms. All right? I would not dare ask you that. Trying to show you the difference between glycolysis and then the production of 32 or 36 ATPs. Big difference, okay? So my carbon rings, the 2,3 carbons that come from the 6-carbon sugar, are going to begin to get rearranged in their structure. As they get rearranged, we're going to find that it's going to form ATP. Now, when they're rearranged, remember, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, C6H12O6. The structure of it alone has tremendous energy. As those carbon to hydrogen chains rearrange, they're giving off electrons. Those electrons get very important. See how we've got this stuff called NAD, for example? Nicotinamide, adenosine. Do y'all remember all that from bio? Look what happens. It turns into NADH. How did I tell you that we balance electrons? In oxidation reduction reactions, which is what's taking place here, you balance electrons with hydrogens. So therefore, as this carbon chain is being rearranged and we're getting electrons, hydrogens are getting captured because I'm going to have to exchange hydrogens and electrons. And that's how we're going to make the ATP. In the case of simple glycolysis, well, I shouldn't call it simple. In the case of simply glycolysis, all you're going to get is 2 ATPs. At this point, the cell can use that. The body can get energy. But when we move into full cellular respiration, those materials are going to get to pass into the mitochondria, and we're going to see a huge amount of ATPs get produced. Now, the lactic acid that gets broken down, note the NADHs that were formed from the rearranging of the molecules, if they don't get to go into the mitochondria, they contribute to the structure of the lactic acid. And lactic acid builds up in the muscles. Muscles hurt, all right? And this is the reason why. People who have enough money will usually go get a massage and drink plenty of water. But those of us who have to exercise and not have that type of money, we're just going to be sore and try to drink plenty of water. So, we're going to find that we've got glycolysis that occurs that can make 2 ATPs, a lactic acid, or I can have the much nicer, much more efficient aerobic respiration. Now, before I start talking about this one, let's see if we can get this animation to play, because this animation is really cool. Just got to figure out if I'm going to have sound.
Morning is being burned to power his bike ride. His breathing rate increases as his leg muscles demand more oxygen to burn more fuel. As this mountain biker heads up the trail, the breakfast he ate this morning is being burned to power his bike ride. His breathing rate increases as his leg muscles demand more oxygen to burn more fuel. Let's zoom down to where this fuel is burned, our cells. Here, the blood vessel on the left delivers fuel and oxygen to a single muscle cell. In cellular respiration, energy and fuel is converted to ATP, shown here as starbursts. Most ATP is made in the cell's mitochondria. ATP powers the work of the cell, such as contraction. Let's take a closer look at how ATP is produced from a molecule of glucose, our fuel. Only the carbon skeleton is shown to keep things simple. The first step is called glycolysis, and it takes place outside the mitochondria. To begin the process, some energy has to be invested. Next, the molecule is split in half. Now, the molecule NAD+, an electron carrier, picks up electrons and hydrogen atoms from the carbon molecule, becoming NADH. Keep track of the electron carriers. They play an important role by transporting electrons to reactions in the mitochondria. In the final steps of glycolysis, some ATP is produced, but not much. For every glucose molecule, only 2 net ATPs are produced outside the mitochondrion. However, glycolysis has produced pyruvic acid, which still has a lot of energy available. Let's follow this pyruvic acid molecule into a mitochondrion to see where most of the energy is extracted. As the molecule enters the mitochondrion, 1 carbon is removed, forming carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Electrons are stripped, forming NADH. Coenzyme A attaches to the 2-carbon fragment, forming acetyl-CoA. Coenzyme A is removed, and the remaining 2-carbon skeleton is attached to an existing 4-carbon molecule that serves as the starting point for the citric acid cycle. The new 6-carbon chain is partially broken down, releasing carbon dioxide. Several electrons are captured by electron carriers, and more carbon dioxide is released. The carbon dioxide that you exhale comes from the reactions of cellular respiration. 2 ATPs are produced by the citric acid cycle for each molecule of glucose. At this point, only a small number of ATPs have been produced. However, more energy is available in the electrons that are being transported by electron carriers. While the citric acid cycle starts another round, let's follow an electron carrier to the next step in the process. Electron carriers such as NADH deliver their electrons to an electron transport chain embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. The chain consists of a series of electron carriers, most of which are proteins that exist in large complexes. Electrons are transferred from one electron carrier to the next in the electron transport chain. Let's take a closer look at the path electrons take through the chain. As electrons move along each step of the chain, they give up a bit of energy. The oxygen you breathe pulls electrons from the transport chain, and water is formed as a byproduct. The energy released by electrons is used to pump hydrogen ions, the blue balls, across the inner membrane of the mitochondrion, creating an area of high hydrogen ion concentration. Hydrogen ions flow back across the membrane through a turbine. Much like water through a dam, the flow of hydrogen ions spins the turbine, which activates the production of ATP. These spinning turbines in your cells produce most of the ATP that is generated from the food you eat. The process you've just observed, cellular respiration, generates 10 million ATPs per second in just one cell. That ATP can power a biker up the trail, or it can power your brain cells as you learn challenging biology topics.
Okay. Everybody understands it now? We're all good, right? Huh? Yeah? Huh? Yeah? Okay, cool. I don't have to talk about it no more then. We're good. Okay. So, we're going to come back to the video. So at the point that we're at right now, we have talked about the